6 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you everyone for showing up to this budget hearing. The topic at hand is the budget, and some good ground rules per policy. We've got 3-minute time limit per person on comments, and in order for everyone to be heard equally, if you have not commented previously during the hearing, you'll be given preference, and or anyone that wants to speak a second time. Beyond that, housekeeping aside, we'll move on to the budget presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Vigario. Welcome everybody to Friday night here at the high school for the budget hearing. Thank you for joining us this evening. I've tried to make this presentation a bit more streamlined than last year's presentation and some of our presentations earlier this year, kind of getting right down to the financials, really. But I do want to start off, and I've done this the last 2 presentations on the budget, kind of with our district-wide mission statement, just emphasizing that middle sentence: we are committed to continuous improvement, innovation, and the celebration of diversity, ensuring the delivery of high-quality education to all. So I think that first part of that sentence cannot be overstated. We are committed to continuous improvement, and I think that is why our entire teaching staff is here with us. Again, just to kind of review our overarching objectives that have guided the district, continue to guide the district for the next 2 years. One is curriculum and instruction enhancement, making sure that we're continually improving, innovating our curriculum and our methods, that we facilitate that to our kids. Meeting the needs of all of our students, making sure that every student who walks through these doors is receiving what we hope to be an excellent education. And then number 3 is fostering culture and belonging for all students and their families and our staff members, making sure that every student who comes to our 2 buildings feels welcome and supported and seen by not only our staff, but what we do on a daily basis. So getting right into it, the budget that we've been working on, we've been looking at, we've been revising since the end of January. The total budget on the school side is $9,080,825. Less offsets is gone up to $1,881,621, and then the net budget requirement is at $7,199,204. I want to explain parts of this as we go through this hearing, because some of these numbers have obviously shifted. We're going to go through some of the cuts as far as staffing, but also supplies that we've had to make to get this budget to where it's at. So looking at, and I want to share with those of us in attendance tonight, kind of, we always talk about the school side of the budget, so what the school district needs to operate the 2 buildings, to pay our staff, to send some of our students to placements to support their education, for transportation, the whole gamut. But there's also an indirect side too, that we don't necessarily deal with, but that's part of the overall budget that the town needs to deal with, that we need to look at when we break this down. When we look at Chapter 70 funding, we look at net school spending, we have to look at the entire picture. So I want to just keep everybody abreast of what that is, what that means, and kind of where we're at. So as I just mentioned, the net school, or the school FY26 request is just shy of $7.2 million. Transportation at this point is $950,000, so just shy of, well, not just shy, but shy of $1 million. That's a decrease from last year. So the net request on the school side, when you look at, even though transportation is a legal obligation for the town to support, it is not part of the net school spending formula. So the net request is at $6.248 million. The rest of these items really kind of talk about some of the indirect costs that the town has to incur through this process. So you look at the retirement contributions, you look at the active employee for insurance, you look at that number is quite large, and that's a number that continues to go up based on the increase of insurance. I believe we're at 16% increase from FY25 to FY26. But that number right there is 967, 647, 72. So you're looking at very close to $1 million that we're paying for, the town is paying for insurance. Retiree insurance at 498, so just shy of 500,000. Tuitions to Baypath, which is, that number is part of the net school spending number. That number is at 578,768. Our school choice out, which we have talked about this number before, we have far many students who are out than in. That number right now is at 1.268 million. Charter tuitions 402. Admin fees 58,000. Less charter reimbursement is at 121. So total indirect costs to the town for the entire school budget. And this, again, these are things that we don't see on a day-to-day basis. We don't see these numbers unless you're putting together the budget. Is 10.385 million. So when we talked about going back to last month's meeting, the last few months actually, as we started to work through some of these numbers, knowing that we would have to make some cuts to support this budget. When we started this process back in late January, the initial budget ask was at 8.2 million. That included 2 additional positions to support an additional separate classroom. Those have long since been removed. We've had some increased offsets, again, which I will talk about in a few minutes. We've had some positive things happen with some hires. But we started with what are some of the general budget reductions as far as supplies and things that we can look at. So staff realignment and offsets was a big one. And that is just over $225,000 in offsets or realignments. And what that means, and I have a slide that will show you exactly where that money comes from, is that people who left the district, whether it is resignation, retirement, or whatnot, we were able to hire or bring people into those new those positions at a much lower rate. So we were able to jump on some situations that we were able to replace positions at sometimes close to $50,000 less than we're paying for those current staff members. We've talked about reducing, based on our trends in the last couple of years, our fuel oil. We can safely say that we can reduce our fuel oil by 15,000 gallons, which equates to $40,000. We had a STEM teacher offset. We received a grant from the state for $75,000. We can use $25,000 of that grant to offset our STEM teacher, which is a district-wide position. Athletic transportation, when looking at those numbers, there were some areas, parts of that transportation budget we could shave off a little over $17,000. We've talked about the bus elimination, which is slightly over $90,000. The adjustment for the salaries based on the contract negotiations. Supplies and instructional costs of just over $6,500 or $6,500. Copy paper at $2,000. Custodial services. This was some additional projects that we had looked at doing for next year, plus some emergency funds, which that equates to just shy of $29,000. Some additional material cuts to the elementary school. The tag grant offset, so we were receiving $40,000 to the district from DESE again to support some of our instruction. Some additional high school supplies to the tune of $2,000. Intermediate curriculum, which we adopted a year and a half ago. We were able to purchase that through some grant funding this year, so that was taken out of the curriculum line in our budget. So that's a total savings, all those numbers together, of $524,000, just shy of $525,000. Next, as I mentioned with our offsets, when we started this process back in January, we came in at 1.521 in offsets, which was far less than FY25. So since that time, so coming from late January, early February to now, we've seen some market increases in a few categories. One was circuit breaker, which I've mentioned in previous meetings. We initially put that number in at a 70% reimbursement for our tuitions. That number has gone up to 75% and 54% for transportation. So you're looking at an increase of $163,000, which In total, our circuit breaker reimbursement will be just shy of $885, so $885,000. Our school choice, which we verified on May 30th, we had a projection of right around $310,000 for school choice. Our special ed increments came in much higher than expected, so we are seeing a big increase there to the tune of $172,000 additional to our school choice fund. And then our STEM teacher offset, which I mentioned previous, that's an additional $25,000. So that brings our offsets currently to $1.881 million, which, as on the first slide I mentioned, that was the initial offset to our overall budget number. So looking at some of our positions, and just going through what we, let's say 2 months ago, projected for the FY cost of these positions to what they are actually going to come in at, based on hires and kind of thresholds that we have to keep at a very kind of set limit at this point. Our adjustment counselor, we're looking at a $45,000 savings from this current year, or projected for next year to what the actual salary will be. Our SLPA and our SLP, you're seeing just over $50,000 savings for those two positions based on what we had budgeted and what we were able to hire. Our SPED director, which we do not have a SPED director yet for the 25-26 school year. We were projected at 114 for that position. We have to cap that position now at closer to 105. Occupational therapist, this is a retirement in the district, was set to make $70,000 in FY26. We have hired somebody at a 0.8, same amount of time for our district at 44,428, so it's a $36,000 savings. Adjustment counselor at the high school, you can see the projection there. Again, it's a $34,000 savings. Our teacher, we're going to talk about positions in a minute, but our art teacher, who that position has been in conversation about being eliminated, that person has since taken a job outside the district, and we've put a cap of $61,571 for a new hire. That's a $27,000 difference. MBHS principal was slated to make just shy of 128. We put a cap at 115 for our new principal, which is a $13,000 savings. Facilities director, projection at 81 to now a cap of 65. That's a $16,000 difference. And then the admin assistant for the elementary school, we have a 11.5 difference there for FY26. So all in total with adjustments. As I mentioned, this was on the previous slide at 225. This number is 242. The reason it's 225 is we're still projecting a slight increase for our custodial contracts. And we did hire a position, our substitute classroom teacher at the elementary school, which came in slightly higher than our former teacher for that classroom. So it jumped down from 242 to 225 for a position savings. So our FY26 budget reductions, and these are the positions, these are positions throughout the district. We've talked about these positions. These haven't really changed for the past few months. We're looking at our instructional coach, 1.0 ELA teacher, a 1.0 MBHS PE teacher. That should say MBPS. What's transpired there is that our elementary school, our shared phys ed teacher, has taken a job in the district as a Title I reading teacher. That person is also certified as a reading instructor. And our high school phys ed teacher is now going to be the district-wide phys ed teacher. So we have a cost savings there, but that phys ed teacher, who we discussed at the last meeting, will be staying in district. We're eliminating the 0.5 media specialist, 0.4 music teacher. Our 1.0 English language learner teacher is going down to a 0.5 position. And the two positions that we're not looking to eliminate are keeping on district-wide are our art teacher and our music teacher. And you can see the combined salaries there, which is just north of $120,000. So these salary reductions across the district, we're looking at an additional $359,467 for salary reductions. Looking at our general budget reductions, looking at our salary reductions, which excludes the art and music positions, looking at a savings right now of that I can tell of one staff member for health insurance of $30,000. That's a total savings of $914,416. This is a shortfall from where I believe the Finance Committee, the memo that I received from the Finance Committee saying that the school could cut 1.037 million. This is 122,000 deficit or shortfall from that number. This plan retains district-wide art and music programming. This number, the 7.199 million budget, is less than a 2% increase from FY25. When you look at the FY25 number to the FY26 number. So that is a very, I would say, succinct presentation based on the numbers we have. I don't know what the chair wishes to do at this point, but my recommended motion to the committee would be to move forward this number for the town meeting on June 30th. Excuse me, June 13th. This number is inclusive of transportation for the FY26 budget.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick. Since this is a voting item, I'll entertain a motion to accept the budget as presented.
Move to accept the budget as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? I'd just like to say there's been a lot of work done to come to this point. And, while we are still eliminating some positions, we're retaining others. Art and music.
It's good to see the circuit breaker bumped up a little bit.
Yeah.
Hoping that trend continues, maybe we get a little more. What did you say the goal is, 90%? That was what everyone's kind of advocating for.
Yeah, I mean,
at the state.
We're advocating for 100%, but 90% is kind of, yeah, that's what they've been discussing for several years, really.
And there will still be revised numbers from the state in about a month or so.
It's gone through the governor to the House and the Senate. It goes back to the governor's desk for final approval, and that will be later this month, early July. But pretty strong assurances that Chapter 70 fund will be the 5.046 million. That's not going to change. So that's a good thing. There was, through the Senate, the rural school aid, which is another grant funding mechanism for the district. It had been cut from 16 million statewide to 7.5. It's gone back up to 16 million at the Senate level. So again, there's some positive conversation that will stay at that level once the governor has a chance to sign it. And that, like I said, that's helpful to our district. We're one of the 64 districts that receive rural school aid.
Which of these Excel sheets does it have that laid out on? I forget which one it was.
It's the,
Is it the overview one? That's- Yeah, we've been talking about the rural school aid for years now, and how it's barely moved the needle. And last year they came through with a lot more. So we're not the only school that's in this sort of a boat in small towns, and every little bit helps. As you can see from the budget, you know, that could be the difference of an entire position in the school or an art or music program. It's a big deal.
questions? All right, taking a look at the spreadsheets and everything else, is there nothing else? All right, all in favor of approving the budget as presented? The fiscal year 2026 school budget of $7,199,204 to be sent to the town moderator for the town meeting on June 13th, 2025. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Any comments? Yes.
Sheila LeBlanc, I just want to ask a question. Tim, I got the full budget, and the total on that is 7,192,704.
Plus Medicaid, right?
Uh-huh.
Plus Medicaid?
No, Medicaid shouldn't be counted in there. But the 7,192,704 is...
Yeah, I have that number too. That's what, it has been in the past when we do a total, but whether that's,
It's a separate line item.
yeah, and that number, that in total should be, do you have 7198? 704?
Yeah, with the Medicaid.
Yes, yes. So we, go ahead.
So technically, your budget is for, your operating budget is 7,192, because Medicaid is totally separate from that.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm saying is you've got like an additional 6,
I think, and that
just because you added the 2
you've done this
together,
before
thinking
too.
that
I know that we've always, I think last year we included that number in the total. You know, whether it's the 7,199 or 7,192, 192 is obviously a little less, but I think that Ms. Graham and I discussed that after I'd sent this out, and I knew that number that we have here is the 7.198 number, so.
And how confident are you in the offsets and what you'll need, what you're carrying over from this year?
There's no carryover added, and as far as the offsets for both circuit breaker, but more recently, the special ed increments for school choice, we're very confident. I talked to Cheryl, I can't recall Cheryl's last name from DESE, last Thursday, and we went through our CHAM submission for the special increments, and she's the one, we came up with that new number, so I'm very, very confident in that number.
Thank you, Sheila. Anybody else? Yes? Please state your name.
Sure, I'm a concerned citizen. My grandson attends the school. He really loves the school. And I've known people, I didn't go to the system when I was in school, but I knew a lot of people, basically sports and things like that. And I think people are doing a wonderful job trying to keep everything intact and doing the things you have to do. My question is, and I understand you've all worked hard, I know that, and there's no doubt about that. However, I'm saying is, are you getting enough help from our state and local Senate and representatives as far as a lot of the dollars people in town here, and including the whole town for everything, sends into Boston, for instance, and of course the school budget is probably the biggest of all. Are you getting enough representation from your local representative and senator? I directly or indirectly know them both, and I was just saying that do you feel that you're getting enough representation so that things don't need to be, moving forward? We're trying to keep the school in a future direction of moving forward and prospering. And you folks in the know, do you feel you're getting enough representation to Boston? That's a basic question.
Sure, just real quick, just for the record, please state your name and
Yeah, Ted Schubert, and I live down on Sylvania Road.
thank you. Tim?
So thank you, Mr. Schubert, for joining us tonight. So a couple things. I think in some ways, yes, they're listening. You know, we've been having similar conversations. I know Senator Rance, I've met with personally on 2 occasions this year. I sent him a letter to his top aide with our concerns around 2 things, around circuit breaker reimbursement, that number going from 75% to 90, plus increasing the tuition reimbursement, the transportation reimbursement for that same initiative, but also taking a look at the Chapter 70 funding mechanism, which we've been talking about for several years, long before I became a superintendent, how it's flawed. It needs to be looked at. So I think they're receptive. Superintendents from across the state, from across Central Mass, do have meetings throughout the year to talk with state reps and state senators about our concerns. I think that they're receptive. I just don't think things are changing quite quickly enough. You're seeing more and more communities, not only in the state, in the entire state, but Central Mass specifically, that are going for overrides every year. Some are successful and some are not, but they're constantly having to find more money to support their school districts, and that's a problem. And that's for both large school districts and small districts.
As the money goes to Boston, does it, you know, I used to talk to, for instance, my brother-in-law, who was a school committee member in the next town over from here, and we used to talk about it. He used to always talk about how the money gets sent to Boston from taxpayers for everything. With, you know, anybody who has a job, they pay real estate, they rent, it ends up in Boston, and a limited amount comes back to the towns around here. And I know historically they've always fought back to try to get, delegate and allocate for their own school systems. And that was a major problem in his career. And that was 40 years ago,
Yeah.
to advocate for his own system. And it's difficult, I do understand. As the money, like I say, goes to Boston, it doesn't all come back. That's all I'm bringing up here. And I've heard numerous people over the years talking about that.
Jump in?
Sure.
I will say, you know, because of the way our government is set up, they have a tough job right out of the gate, because they are representing multiple towns based on population. You know, the way the district is drawn, they're going to Boston trying to speak for a bunch of small towns, and they have to really, the deck is kind of stacked against them when they get there. So I acknowledge they have a difficult job, and we can, you know, we're always willing to help and write them whatever information they need. If they need more ammo from us, you know, just the conversation and the feedback. I think they have a pretty good presence in the town as far as participating in things and getting feedback from people. But I just don't, I don't want them to be drowned out in Boston. And it's easy to do when you have all the bigger towns and big cities and those areas that have multiple representatives, sometimes from, you know, one relatively small geographic area, and ours have to cover a large area and get a lot of different opinions and represent what the state views as a small population. That's why we're talking about the rural school aid. You know, to their credit, the Senate said, no, we're bumping it back up to a higher level. And that's great, and I'm glad that someone's being heard there in that respect. And that's why they have the Senate too, because it more balances the population with the geographic areas. I think that's important, and it shows that, at least, even though sometimes we get drowned out in the larger body of representatives, we could be heard a little better in the Senate and make those changes. So
You just hate to see eliminations as well.
it shows.
I know you're all dealing with that. You work
Yes.
hard. I understand that.
It shows that there are voices being heard, but I'm acknowledging that they face a tough battle, because the loudest voices are in Boston and those surrounding areas. They don't even have to travel so far to get there and speak up. So.
And just a point, the rural school aid statewide, so far that's been approved is 16 million. That's it. for the entire state, for all rural districts. 16 million.
How many districts did you say get the rural?
63 or 64.
Yeah.
And the MASS ask has always been closer to 60 million for that funding. So it's even at 16 million, it's very short of that goal.
Just that alone, just bumping that 16 million up would be huge for all these districts, including us. And that would go a long way to alleviating some of the costs, because really, we have a not only a moral and ethical duty, especially to the out-of-district placements, but it's also legally required. So part of that is an unfunded mandate from the state. You know, we have these things that are expected of us legally by the state. So it would make sense that they would offset some of that more in kind to, better support these rural districts. And yeah, 16 million is a paltry sum compared to what they're dumping money into around the state. And that would be a huge thing if that never got bumped up.
And we were hoping for an upward trend this year, since last year was the first time. In previous years, I don't know if you've been involved or paid attention to previous years, but one year we went from $60,000 to $60,800. An $800 increase in rural school aid year over year, just shortly after COVID, when everyone's talking about how expensive everything is, and the state was like, here's an extra $800, so spend it all in one place. And then last year we saw it jump significantly, so the thought was maybe there was a trend that we were going up, and it was very disheartening personally. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the committee, but personally, to hear that initial coming out of the House of Representatives, it was being cut back to
7.
yeah, to 7.5, more than cut in half from the previous year. And it's like that's not the right way we're moving here. There's still a whole bunch of kids out here in
Tough to deal with,
districts
sure.
like this, and
Sure.
you feel like you're making that little one step forward, and then all of a sudden it jumps back. So hopefully this at least readjusts that, and we can look at pushing it further next year, because it's $120,000 or something that we get from that rural school aid now. And to the bigger cities, that's a drop in the bucket. That doesn't matter at all. To us, it's huge. That's what we're talking about, is the difference that we're asking over what we were trying to shoot for this year. I mean, that's a massive thing. And every little bit like that shows up big time in small towns, and not in these big cities where it just gets lost. It's not the same thing. We really feel the impact a lot more.
You're running a nice school here, so that's what I'm trying to say, and it sure would be nice to keep it that way. That's all. As a general citizen, and you hear about it all the time. Good kids, good school, good programs. You just hate to eliminate things and moving forward, where the direction is. Because of these reasons, I know you deal with that every day, and it is difficult for you, I know that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, Ward Street, Road 1. Can you tell us what the accreditation status is of the high school?
It's accredited.
Fully?
Yeah, with the setting up process last year, we had a few things to work on, like most schools have after the process, but it's accredited.
And what are those?
At the top of my head, Mr. K, I don't recall. I think it was around curriculum alignment, making sure that there's consistent alignment of curriculum across grades 9 through 12. So aligned and articulated.
Anybody else?
Heather McPherson, currently ELA high school teacher that has been cut from the staff. And also my son has been school choice to this district since he was in kindergarten. And so I just want to add a couple of things. So, I think that the teachers and staff work exceedingly hard in this district, and every day is a joy and a battle at the same time. We have the absolute pleasure of working with the children in this town. some of you that have grandchildren that attend here or have had children in the past come through this district. But we also have the uphill battle of having to deal with folks who just want to slander and defame not just the school. They talk about the school like the people in the building don't exist, as if it's the school is always a problem. And the people here work very hard, very, very hard. And to even question that whether or not the school is accredited, I'm sorry. No, don't interrupt me. Excuse me.
Hold on.
I don't think I'm being hostile, but I think I'm being very firm because that question is completely insulting. And if you knew the first thing about what was going on in this district, you would have known that it went through the NEAS process last year. Period. Now, I also think it's very unfortunate, and then I'll end what I have to say. But I think it's very unfortunate that also back in January, when you were going through this process and starting to think about the budget, that you also have a board of selectmen, a chairperson, who said on camera, and I am paraphrasing, that wouldn't even consider an override, made that decision for the town. There was no vote, there was no choice. And unfortunately, my job, I'll find something else. But the kids, they're the ones that are suffering the most. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, everyone. I believe that'll be it. I have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
We'll move to adjourn the meeting, the hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful evening.
Thank you.